Good afternoon, everyone. It's a couple moments past noon here. I'm Pete Deegan, United States Attorney for the Northern District of Iowa. I'm very happy to be here today with Chief Trelka and several of our law enforcement and community partners to talk about a new crime reduction initiative here in Waterloo. The initiative is called Iowa Safe, and it stands for Safer Areas for Everyone. Now, I want to start by taking a couple minutes to welcome and introduce some of our Iowa Safe partners. And I'll start over here to my right. We've got Quentin Hart, Mayor of Waterloo. Thank you, sir, for being here. Thomas Reinwart, Senior Supervisory Resident Agent for the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Don Dockendorf, the Resident Agent in Charge for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. We've got Lisa Williams from my office, Assistant United States Attorney and our Project Safe Neighborhoods Coordinator. We've got Major Joe Liebold with the Waterloo Police Department, Lieutenant Corbin Payne, also with the Waterloo Police Department. We've got Waterloo City Council Member Pat Morrissey and Waterloo City Council Member Jerome Amos. We've got Amanda Goodman, the Executive Director of the Family and Children's Council of Black Hawk County. Alan Heisterkamp is with us. He's the Director for the Center for Violence Prevention. We've got Reverend Ed Loggins here. We've got Community Member Preston Taylor, First Assistant Black Hawk County Attorney Brad Walls, and the County Attorney Brian Williams from Black Hawk County. Thank you very much to everyone for taking the time to be here today and be part of this initiative. The U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions has made the fight against violent crime a top priority for the Department of Justice, and it's a top priority for our office as well. In October of last year, the Attorney General announced the reinvigoration of Project Safe Neighborhoods, or PSN. PSN is a nationwide program that's been around since about 2001 and has proven effective in reducing violent crime in our communities. It has historically focused on the targeted prosecution of federal gun crimes. Attorney General Sessions has challenged all United States Attorney's offices to revitalize their PSN programs, but also to develop strategies that incorporate the lessons learned since PSN launched in 2001. In this district, the Northern District of Iowa, and especially in Waterloo, we have had great success taking guns and offenders off the street by enforcing federal gun laws as part of Project Safe Neighborhoods. But we also know that a more comprehensive approach to crime reduction requires a strong partnership between law enforcement and the community. We are not simply going to prosecute our way to safer neighborhoods. When the police and the community work together, we give ourselves the very best chance to prevent crime before it happens. And by opening lines of communication and building trust, we can better work together when the laws need to be enforced to keep our communities safe. The Safer Areas for Everyone initiative represents the next phase of Project Safe Neighborhoods in Waterloo. Since 2009, Waterloo's overall crime rate has declined by more than 30%. However, certain violent crime continues to warrant special attention. Waterloo has chosen to participate in this initiative due to the success already achieved in the city and Chief Trelka's strong leadership and commitment to engaging with Waterloo's community to do even better where we can. Through Iowa Safe, law enforcement will continue to hold gun offenders accountable through prosecution, but we will also redouble our efforts to work with community members to support locally based prevention, rehabilitation, and reentry efforts to stop violence and crimes before they occur, and to help those who have been incarcerated return to society as law-abiding citizens. Law enforcement needs the community's help to take violent crime reduction in Waterloo to the next level. And we are looking forward to this new partnership and sharing ideas on how to make a safer area for everyone here in Waterloo. At this time, I believe Chief Trelka has some remarks for us.
Thank you, Pete. I appreciate it. The timing of this is perfect. It's the perfect time, it's the perfect place, and we're going to build upon the successes we've already had. The crime rate has been driven down 32% in the past decade, and we're simply going to build on that success with our proven community policing strategies. And this is a partnership that brings our vision into more of a focus and provides additional resources for us to do what we need to do, not only to hold the worst of the worst accountable in our community, but also to engage in some action to keep, in particular, young men from picking up a weapon and using it in a crime of violence.
Thank you. So once again, I want to thank our Iowa Safe partners for being with me today. Looking forward to working together to take crime prevention to the next level here in Waterloo. I want to especially thank Assistant United States Attorney Lisa Williams from our office. She leads our Project Safe Neighborhoods initiative and is a big part of our Iowa Safe initiative here. And at this time, the Chief and I'd be happy to take some questions. Yes, sir.
I remember talking about this program about 3 years ago. What happened then? Chief?
About Project Safe Neighborhoods? Yeah, Project Safe Neighborhoods has always been a very large part of our crime reduction strategy here in the Northern District of Iowa, and it goes back for many years. I've actually been part of our office for 20 years now, and we have been vigorously enforcing federal gun laws in order to try to keep our communities safe for a long time. I guess what we're talking about here today is really taking it up a notch, taking it to the next level by engaging with community members on a regular basis, sitting down at the table together, exchanging ideas, and finding ways to support each other, both on the enforcement side, but also on the crime prevention and rehabilitation side.
And in addition to that, the U.S. Attorney's Office just wants to build on our successes. And another component is the Waterloo Police Department keeps very detailed, specific records in regard to our criminal activity, so we can identify crime trends and identify strategies and how to address them. The U.S. Attorney's Office was intrigued by the specifics of the records we keep, so it helps. One component of this is to look at it over time and prove the success we have with articulable data.
Money?
Money can always be a factor, but we always need to try to find ways to overcome the difficulty or the excuse that we don't have enough funding. And I've preached it time and time again. Out of the departments, out of the cities that I like to compare this police department to, law enforcement services cost our residents $198 per year per resident. Out of those 6 other cities I like to compare us to, their range is $250 to over $300. The Waterloo Police Department's a bargain, and we're effective. And I've often told our elected officials, I'm not going to use a lack of funding as an excuse.
And I'll add to the Department of Justice, as part of this reinvigoration of the Project Safe Neighborhoods program, has designated funds to be available for grant requests for initiatives that meet certain criteria. So that is certainly part of what we're going to be talking about as a group, is what funding might be available and how it might be used to make Iowa Safe successful.
Chief, doesn't this tie into the foundation you talked about at the council meeting the other day?
It most certainly does. There are several prongs involved in this initiative. Pillars, they were referred to today: prevention, enforcement, and deterrence. The foundation that was established by one of our officers, the nonprofit foundation, is a strong part of the prevention pillar.
Yes, sir.
You talked about the people coming from prison back into the community. I've seen the judicial and law enforcement. How do you work with the Department of Corrections with those companies?
Well, I'll say number one, it starts with communication by having folks from the probation departments working with us, both the federal and state probation departments. we can better talk about ways to help the folks that are reentering the community. There's also hooking them up with existing resources in the community. What we always discover when we get together, when we talk with community members, is there are people and organizations out there that want to help. Sometimes they need help to help others. But often, what the real help they need is to make that connection with the people that need it. So things like reentry type programs, job fairs, even WARN type call-ins, where we'll have folks that come in and are educated, not just about the consequences of returning to a life of crime, but also the resources that are there in the community to help them. I think those are important ways that we can help support people that are coming out of incarceration. Yes, sir.
So this sounds a lot like what Cedar Rapids did in response to its issue with violent crime that had been having for a year. They were trying to reduce the statistics, and they came up with the police community action team, the PCAP, which is the acronym used. This sounds very similar to that, which is to have police officers engaged in a very community-based system. Are you guys drawing anything from their system or incorporating any of their methods?
I think the chief can speak to that. I think the answer is yes.
Partially, yes, because we have the same type of unit that has been in place. Funding was identified for it, if I'm not mistaken, in 2009. It was implemented and went operational in 2010 or 2011, and that's our VCAT unit, our Violent Crime Apprehension Team. And they work very effectively, holding the worst of the worst in our community accountable. Those persons who are engaging in violent crime and committing these criminal actions against each other. I'd like to say that Cedar Rapids and Waterloo have fed off from each other, because we do communicate. We have a dialogue in the development and evolution of these special units.
And I think another thing that Iowa Safe is already focused on, and we're going to continue to focus on, are ways that the police department can make that link to folks that are at risk, families that need help, to get them the resources that they need to avert a crisis that could lead to a crime of violence.
Steve, I'm more interested in that portion of it. What are you going to do specifically to head off trouble? Give me a scenario.
Well, the one thing we still struggle with is community members unwilling to provide us with information, not only for crimes that have been committed, but if there are rumblings of what could occur. So again, we're appealing to the community. And I see a community member out here right now who's also been appealing to our community members to provide information so that we can do more to ensure that these acts don't happen, but if they do happen, so that we can generate a prosecutable case to move forward and hold them accountable. So we're still struggling with information, people providing us with accurate information.
Does that include information about a young man who maybe headed the wrong direction and hasn't committed a crime or a serious crime yet?
Now there, we're not struggling so much because, like I've said, and I've made this comment in the past, it's sad that we can, between our school resource officers, between our officers who are interested in averting these type of activities, between our school teachers, between our school administrators, between involved community members, we can accurately identify who is prone to become involved in a gang lifestyle or a lifestyle of violence. So we need to do something. Shame on us for not doing more to interrupt that evolution, that cycle. And that's exactly where we're going with this initiative.
Other than making a statement saying we really want to communicate better with our community, what are some ways that SAFE is going to better bridge that police community gap and make sure that you're able to have that dialogue? Because I know a lot of police forces have tried this in the past, and they still say that they struggle with getting that communication. You guys have obviously reached out in the past and tried to get them more involved. So what makes SAFE different than some of the other initiatives that you've had prior to this?
Well, it has been a challenge, but I think SAFE, what our goal is to not just communicate when the opportunity presents itself, but to have a structured set of meetings, quite frankly, where we get together and we sit around the table and we have a true information sharing session where, for example, we can talk to the community members about what are the barriers to community members coming to us with information, supporting the police when they're investigating a violent act, so we can talk about ways that we can overcome those barriers. I think it starts by making a real commitment to communicating and doing it on a regular, continuing basis so that we can hopefully see some positive results.
For instance, if something you'd like to see, program or something come out of this partnership, for instance, something or what?
One component of our vision is outreach specialist in the community. A good example is Pastor Q. Marshall, Preston Taylor. Guys who have been there, guys who've done that. When I walk up to a residence where this 11, 12-year-old kid lives who's prone to become a gang member and I'm in uniform, there's already a wall built up. But when involved members of our community, like Preston or Pastor Q, walk up to that door, it's easier to overcome any barriers that may be there. And those are the inroads that we'll get. And these individuals, these outreach specialists, will be provided with the tools and training, and they'll have knowledge of the resources available to that family to assist them with that child who's engaging in these behaviors. Now, many of the parents or many of the adults that are involved in that child's life, it may be the mother, it may be the grandmother, because dad's gone for whatever reason, they appreciate. They want some relief too. They want some help, most of them. And we're hopefully going to be able to provide that help. And some of the resources, Mayor Hart had a program where he's encouraging jobs for people in these situations. So our vision is to offer many services. Again, it's not soft on crime. People still need to be held accountable. Our goal is to hold the worst of the worst accountable, but we're also looking at exploring initiatives and programs, proven programs that have an impact on that young child's life before they get to the point where they pick up that gun.
And just to follow up on that, there have been similar initiatives in other parts of the country that have had success where, for example, the police will learn of a high-risk situation where you've got groups that are in a dispute that may escalate to a crime of violence. And the police, being on the front lines and being the folks that first receive that information, can then partner with community mentors that are perhaps in the best position then to go in and find out what's the root cause of the conflict. Where is there a need for help? And often it's with the individual, but sometimes it's with the individual support system, maybe in their home. Maybe there's a parent that needs resources that they're not getting. And to do it in a effective way so that whoever's at risk can get the help they need, but also hopefully a more serious situation can be averted.
Some say guns don't kill people, people do, but where are all these guns coming from? Young people have their hands on. A lot of them I know are stolen, Chief.
It's a mixture. Straw buyers, stolen. For people who do own guns, we as gun owners have a responsibility to make sure they're appropriately secured. Because it pains me and it breaks my heart when I see weapons getting stolen out of unlocked cars in our community, or weapons stolen out of houses that weren't secured in a gun safe or another safe area. But money are getting stolen in burglaries, straw purchases. They're getting stolen in other communities and end up here. It's not difficult to get access to a weapon. And I'm a pro-gun guy. But we as gun owners need to show more responsibility as well. Because it's true. It's people make the decision to pick up that weapon and pull that trigger.
And I'll add to that we have here today senior members of our local ATF and FBI offices They're here because, and they've been here in Waterloo for some time now as part of a federal task force focusing on violent crime. And you mentioned straw purchasers. This is an area where the federal law takes that kind of activity very seriously. And when we have situations where someone is unlawfully acquiring a gun for somebody else, that's something that we aggressively investigate and prosecute if we can. We want to make sure that we're doing everything we can under the law to keep guns from ending up in the wrong hands. Yes, sir.
Recently, it's come up that citizens are concerned about it targeting certain neighborhoods, certain races. How does Project Safe make sure that doesn't happen?
I would say it starts with effective and appropriate policing. As prosecutors, we are constantly working with our law enforcement partners who are out there on the streets investigating crime and making sure that they are following the evidence where it leads and not engaging in prohibited profiling, et cetera. So that's something that we always need to be on the watch out as law enforcement officials. There's no place for discrimination in the enforcement of the laws. And we need to make sure that we're vigilant and make sure that that's not happening in Waterloo or any place else in the Northern District of Iowa. Yes, sir.
Do you foresee SAFE moving beyond Waterloo to other communities, potentially places like Seattle?
It's a good question. We're starting in Waterloo, again, for some of the reasons I mentioned. Waterloo does an excellent job of maintaining their crime data so that we hopefully will be able to analyze and we would hope and expect that we see some results. We are going to start in Waterloo with the idea that if we can find success here, that this will be a program that we can take to other parts of the state or other parts of the Northern District and hopefully find success in other places as well. Yes?
So what earmarks are you looking at that you can say, yes, it was successful?
To me, the ultimate sign that we're being successful is to look at the various types of crime, and particularly violent crime, and see if we can have them dip even lower in our community. There are statistics for these types of offenses, and that's what we would like to see. Those are the earmarks. Yes, sir?
Walt Cunningham and I used to go into the school years ago, and Walt Cunningham told me that he could tell at an early age in school who was going to be a problem and who was not. The school system, the teachers know who the problem is, because I hear all the time in Bible study how the kids are cussing out the teachers, cussing out the helpers and the assistants and everything. And another thing that just disturbs me greatly is I separate violence and non-violence. When I say violence, I mean guns and stuff. But on the sentencing end of it, 20 years or 30 years ain't 20 or 30 years. I heard that they get a day off for being good, that kind of stuff. If you made it hard, and I mean hard, it might back some people off from using guns. So 20 years or 30 years means 20 or 30 years. Not a good day off because you had a good day sitting.
Chief, you want to talk about perhaps the school angle?
Yes, Mr. Mosley, we've got, and we're of the same philosophy. Matter of fact, we have proven tools to help identify these children who have had adverse childhood experiences, to identify these youth, these juveniles, and bring them into the program. And sometimes it's hard to lead a horse to water and make them drink, but these kids are being disruptive in school. They're being disruptive in our community. If they get arrested for disorderly conduct or shoplifting or something like that, that's our tool to coerce them to get involved in the programming. Excellent point on sentencing. That's why our federal partners are so important, because they've got some effective sentencing tools that are appropriately holding these prosecuted and convicted individuals wholly accountable.
And to just follow up on that last point, first of all, most of the gun offenses that are prosecuted in our district and in federal court, they don't carry a mandatory minimum sentence. So it will ultimately be up to a judge to decide what sort of sentence is appropriate. But when the judge does decide to sentence and impose a sentence, there is no parole in the federal system. So for example, if you're sentenced to a 10-year term of incarceration, you're never going to see a parole board and get out early. Now, what can happen is, you mentioned good time. If they earn good time while in incarceration, they can earn up to about 15% off, but that's really it. If you get a 10-year sentence, you're going to serve 8.5 years in the federal system. And I use 10 only as an example. So ultimately, judges do decide what sentences are, but when we're talking about folks that have engaged in criminal activity that indicates that they are a risk to cause harm in our communities, we find that we can get sentences that are substantial in the federal system, and they do serve the time. Yes, sir.
You mentioned the regular meetings that you guys would like to have as part of this initiative, keep an open dialogue. But there's some other elements, some other pieces of meat that are part of the SAFE program that you can kind of list off for me, some of the things that you guys are planning on doing in the coming months for this initiative, that we might be able to list off some of those factors that you're going to be doing to change.
And if you're talking about specific items, what I don't want to do is prejudge any particular specific initiative. We've talked generally about some of the strategic goals of Iowa Safe, and we've talked about finding ways to link up with community resources to help support community members who might be in crisis or might be at risk for having a violent situation. But it's going to be a group effort to try to identify what specific action items, what specific programs are worthy of our attention, and what this group can do with the resources and the abilities that we have to try to make a difference here in Waterloo. So it starts by communicating. It starts by being true partners with our community members, which is why I'm so excited to have so many of them here represented today, and really get down to what are the barriers, what are the issues that prevent community members from having the resources they need in order to prevent a violent situation.
There's a starting point, and you guys are hoping that you can identify those barriers and then overcome them.
That's right. It starts with communication and understanding, but we want to make sure that we are focused on action items, that we are focused on things that this group can do individually, or perhaps as a group, or perhaps through some grant funding that will actually make a difference in Waterloo. Yes, sir.
Since you're coming into his community and he put you on this spot, this mayor, does he have anything to say about this initiative coming in?
Well, I think the biggest statement is that there is no amount of programs that we can try to put in place to curb some of the path that we've seen some of our young people being led towards. And, this is 2018, so we need to think of several different ways to be able to accomplish the goals of changing our communities. Our police department and justice department can't be all, say all, and that's why you look behind me and you see a group of concerned citizens, those that are working in this capacity, that are trying to work together to come up with solutions to change the outcome of some of the lives of our young people. I talk to young people every day. The chief mentioned trying to work with Iowa at Works to create summer job programs so that while our young people aren't in school, we can teach them to be employable, those that are most at risk. We're putting together, working with Iowa at Works to do expungement clinics. You have people, it was mentioned earlier about trying to get people back into the workforce. Well, we're putting together an expungement workshop so that those that have made a mistake could continue to find viable employment. But there is no lengths that we can take to ensure that we have safe communities and that we're getting the voices and people that are engaged. And, you know, these opportunities and working with the chief over about the past 2.5 years since I've been here, it's just been incredible because, yes, we look out sometimes and we see that there's a problem outside, but the chief has worked very hard to work with all of us on the inside to make sure that we're doing what we need to do to impact the community in the way in which we need to do in 2018. So this is a great opportunity to work with our community partner to move forward and change the outcome and trajectory in the way that some of our young people are heading.
All right, thanks once again for being here, and particularly to our Iowa Safe partners for joining us here today.